Welcome to Germanna Community College's online note-taking workshop. This workshop is designed to provide you with the information and skills necessary to get the most out of your classroom lectures, whether you are a new or experienced note-taker. Let's begin by taking a quick look at the main topics we'll be going over today. First, I'll give you some advice for how to set yourself up for a successful note-taking experience. Next, we'll go over some tools, techniques, and guidelines for taking effective notes. Lastly, I'll show you how to get the most out of your notes by periodically reviewing them. Not surprisingly, many students who are inexperienced in taking good notes often wonder whether or not they are necessary for getting good grades. For this first section on setting up for success, we'll begin by exploring answers to the following questions. Who can benefit from note-taking? What are the advantages, and how can you set yourself up for success? Virtually everyone can benefit from taking good notes. If you're a student who is having trouble remembering material, knowing which topics to study, or keeping your notes organized, chances are you'll find some useful tips in this presentation that will help you be better prepared come test-taking time. There are several advantages to note-taking. Though you may understand the material your instructor goes over during lectures, good note-taking skills will help you remember information that you may forget later on. Effective note-taking skills can also serve to maximize your study efforts by helping you identify which reading assignment points to focus on. In the end, practicing these skills and taking the time to review your notes effectively will help you to learn more information in less time overall. Contrary to what you may think, good note-taking skills do not start in the classroom. Before you even put a pen to notebook paper, there are several things you can do to ensure that you're prepared to take the best possible notes. First, make sure to complete any outside research or reading assignments your professor may have given you. By coming to class already familiar with the topics that will be discussed, you'll be able to better understand lecture material and think of questions you may not have thought to ask otherwise. Also, it's impossible to take good notes if you come to class without the proper materials. When we go over tools, techniques, and guidelines for note-taking, I'll offer suggestions for the best supplies to keep handy. Some professors joke that the front and center row of seats magically grant A's to the students who sit in them. Really, though, students who sit near the front of the classroom tend to get better grades because they can hear and see information more clearly and pay better attention than students who sit at the back of the class. Lastly, it helps to briefly review your syllabus and old lecture notes before class in order to refresh your memory so that you're primed and ready to build on new information to things you've already learned. Maintaining your focus is critical for understanding lecture material as well as taking good notes. It can be easy to get distracted during class, especially if you're hungry, tired, or bored. However, by being aware of your wandering mind, you can bring yourself back to the present by gently refocusing your attention. Sometimes, simply writing down your wandering thoughts can help clear your mind of those distractions, allowing you to concentrate on information. Though it can be tempting at times, it's best to also refrain from doodling in your notebook and instead stay focused on taking clear, legible notes. Observe your instructor as well by maintaining eye contact. Finally, participate by asking and answering questions. Not only will this help you pay attention and understand information better, but it also shows your professor that you are interested in the material and lets him or her know which parts to spend more time on. In order to fully comprehend the information your professor goes over in class, it's helpful to clarify your intentions for what you intend to gain from the lecture. Though you may disagree with something your textbook or professor says, it's best to postpone debate until after you fully grasp the point your instructor is trying to make. In addition, you may be tempted to come to class with the idea that the information covered will be boring or irrelevant to you. By letting go of those preconceptions, however, you can help yourself become more capable of learning from your lectures and thinking critically about the information and topics covered. Now we'll go over some tools, techniques, and guidelines for taking good notes in the classroom. In this section, you'll learn some helpful methods for staying organized. I'll also give you tips for how to tell which information is important to write down, and a few helpful techniques for writing shorthand notes in order to record information as quickly as possible. Though many students like to use spiral-bound or composition notebooks to write notes in, I highly recommend you use a 3-ring binder filled with loose-leaf notebook paper. A binder makes it easy to reorganize notes that may have gotten out of order, and also makes it easier for notes to be photocopied individually. Especially for those of us who are concerned about preserving the environment, it can be tempting to save paper by writing on both sides of the page. However, this often makes it easy to overlook notes when you're reviewing them later, which in the end is less efficient and wastes both time and resources. Finally, to ensure proper organization, it's essential to label, number, and date each page of your notes. By doing this, you'll be able to quickly identify the sequence and topic of your notes and easily reorganize them if they happen to get out of order later. There are some specific clues to be on the lookout for when taking lecture notes. First, be alert to repetition of information. When your professor reiterates something multiple times, it's a sure sign that it's important information that will likely appear on tests or quizzes. Also, keep an ear out for introductory, transition, and concluding words and phrases that indicate a process or sequence of events that you should make note of. Overhead projectors and whiteboard diagrams will often have important information that you should record as well. In addition, pay attention to your instructor's body language and interest level. If you notice him or her becoming more excited, interested, or passionate about a certain topic, it's likely that it's something they feel is important for you to know. Finally, be sure to highlight obvious clues your instructor may give you, like if they specifically say that a certain point of information will be on a test. Many students are often tempted to write down everything their instructor says, which can be overwhelming and ineffective. Instead of writing down lectures verbatim, pay attention to key words and phrases. These include specific concepts, names, and technical terms, along with linking words that describe an action, relationship, or degree. For instance, if your professor describes a certain war as being the most costly or fatal in history, you'll want to take note of that. Especially for visual learners, it's also helpful to draw pictures or diagrams that may help you understand information better. Some professors also include outlines of their lectures on a PowerPoint slide or presentation board. Copying that essential material is also highly recommended. When writing notes, use your own words to ensure that you truly understand the information covered and aren't just mindlessly copying down text. However, try to keep your thoughts separate so you don't confuse your own opinions with your instructors. Also, try not to write too close together and make sure to leave enough blank space in case you have to go back and fill in missing or extra information. Finally, though it's not required, taking notes in different colors can help you visually distinguish different headings and topics on the page. Particularly if your instructor speaks at a rapid pace or covers information very quickly, it's important to be able to abbreviate words in order to record as much information as quickly as possible. Listed on this slide are simple methods for abbreviating words, such as using just the first syllable of a word, eliminating vowels, or using apostrophes to substitute for letters. Standard symbols are also useful substitutes for longer words. This slide shows some common symbols, along with examples of how to use them to represent information in your notes. Math symbols can also be used to represent common words or terms. This slide shows how some common math symbols, like the addition, equal to, and greater than or less than signs, can be used to abbreviate information in the examples shown. This slide has even more initials and abbreviations for you to utilize in your note-taking. By becoming familiar with these abbreviations, along with the ones listed on the 2 previous slides, you can help to maximize your ability to take quick, concise notes that you'll be able to understand when reviewing them later. In addition to standard abbreviations, you can use your own graphic signals to highlight important or unclear information. You can do this by using punctuation marks like an asterisk or question mark, or by underlining or highlighting information. No matter which methods or signals you choose to utilize, the most important thing is that they're ones that you feel comfortable using and can easily interpret when reviewing your notes later. Now that you know some helpful methods for abbreviating your notes, let's go over some different ways you can organize them on paper. The Cornell method of note-taking divides your sheet into 3 sections. The biggest section to the right of the page is reserved for taking lecture notes during class using the techniques described here and in the previous slides. The left side column is for you to write down main topics, questions about material, diagrams, and study prompts, and the bottom row is for summarizing overarching main ideas for quick reference. The left Q column and bottom summary row should be filled in after class during your review sessions. This slide shows an example of notes that have been typed using the Cornell method of note-taking. As you can see, the right side section contains class notes that are labeled and organized using headings, bullet points, and appropriate abbreviations. The left column contains some main points and questions to help guide your study during review sessions, and the bottom row contains main topics and takeaway points for quick reference. This mind mapping method is a unique style of note-taking that can be especially helpful to visually oriented note-takers. With this method, the main topic is drawn or written in the center of the page, and subheadings are connected and branch out to make something that looks like a roadmap of information. Though the mind mapping method is not necessarily suitable for all kinds of lecture notes, it can be useful for drawing connections and identifying relationships between certain points, and is typically used to supplement other text-oriented note-taking styles, like the Cornell method. This last method of note-taking is probably the most common among college students. Most of us are familiar with some variation of the outline method, which organizes topics hierarchically according to main headings, subheadings, and key points. Though the outline method is less comprehensive than the Cornell method, it is still helpful for recording information and quickly identifying the main points and details of a lecture for later review. Now that I've shown you how to set yourself up for success and utilize good note-taking skills, we'll go over ways to maximize the benefits of all your hard work by effectively reviewing your notes. When it comes to taking good notes, just because lecture is over doesn't mean that your job is finished. Immediately after class, it's important to proofread and edit your notes for clarity before you forget any information. At this point, you can also take time to fill in key words that you may have overlooked or forgotten to write down, and also create summaries of lecture information, particularly if you're using the Cornell method of note-taking. Generally, we can only recall about 50% of information we have just learned. After only 24 hours, most of us can only remember 20%. Because of this, it is critically important that you review your notes within 24 hours of taking them in order to retain as much material as possible and transfer information from your short-term to your long-term memory. To practice memorizing information, use key words to recite and test yourself on material you have learned. Additionally, you should briefly review your notes at least once per week in order to maximize retention and minimize the time you'll spend cramming the night before a test. Finally, typing up your handwritten notes helps to not only make your notes more clear and legible for studying, but it also forces you to review them by the sheer process of copying them onto your computer. Hopefully you've learned some helpful tips for effective note-taking throughout this presentation. As closing reminders, Remember that good note-taking is a skill that takes time to learn and become proficient at. It's also a process that begins before you enter the classroom and continues after you've recorded your notes on paper. Finally, when it comes to note-taking, practice makes perfect, and if you continue in your motivation to get good grades by taking effective notes, you will undoubtedly eventually achieve success.